My name's Hugh. I'm a co-host on The Imperfects. I'm the son of Sri Lankan and English immigrants, and I call Australia home. We at The Imperfects acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, and we extend our respects to the elders past and present. I've spent much of the last decade travelling around this country sharing stories. In doing so, I acknowledge and pay homage to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's rich history of storytelling. I also acknowledge that whenever I talk about or practice resilience, there is no greater example than the one set by the world's oldest living culture. We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh Van Kuylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum.
And I'm Josh from Hugh's mum.
And this is The Imperfects. Well, another, we say it all the time, another exciting episode with Dilruk Jayasinha as our guest. He'll be coming up very shortly. It's good to see you guys.
Great to see you both.
Yeah. It's just exciting
really
to be into the season and going. I just love, it's just having episodes come out every Monday and we're into it and
loving it.
We are, yep.
Yeah. Well, we are, that's what I meant. Yeah. I wasn't putting words in the listeners. But you guys are no doubt loving it.
Classic you guys. Oh, dear. Would you guys like a Vance update before we start?
Oh, Josh.
The dog.
What do you think? Yeah. Oh, your dog, yeah. Vance update?
Yeah, of course.
Vance.
Yeah, of course.
How could I say no to that?
It is a Monday. Yeah.
There's not one single person listening right now who's thinking, I was wanting one of those.
Yeah, but now that they've heard the possibility, like now that you've said, do you want a Vance update? I mean, I'm assuming.
Have we done a Vance update before?
Well, we talked about how he eats. But not an update.
So it's just a Vance announcement?
It's just a Vance piece of news.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vance news.
Yeah, this is Vance news.
Yeah, okay.
For the Vance fans.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful black lab.
Did you say for the Vance fans?
Yeah, the Vance
fans. That's a nice name for the fan club. The Vance Club. Anyway, God, this better be some bloody good Vance news.
Not actually that good, I think. But anyway,
God.
Super fans will remember that Vance eats headphones.
I'm hosting the show. I can't even remember it.
Yeah, I actually forgot we'd ever talked about that too. When was that?
I can't remember why he came up, but he eats
Episode 2, Season 1.
Specifically, Dr. Dre beats headphones.
Of course, yes.
He's eaten 3 pairs of mine, 1 of Penny's. He's eaten 2 pairs of my shoes. The other day, he's eaten 3 pairs of Penny's Sunnies. He's just a menace.
What do you mean eat Sunnies? Like
just
full like
crunches them.
Oh, it doesn't like finish them off.
No, he doesn't eat like the lenses are just on the ground and there's plastic.
It's not like a trash can. Just put anything near him and just eat it. Gone. Yeah, okay.
He adds so much stress to our lives. It's just ridiculous. But anyway.
Yeah, he sounds great.
So Vance, I'll tell you something he's done recently. In the last 4 days.
Glad to see you're just pulling things off the top of your head.
Is this the update? Is this the update bit?
No, this is not the update.
Oh, okay. This is
a warm-up. This is a warm-up to the update. Yeah. Actually, now I think about it, it's not about Vance. It's actually about the kids. It's actually about the kids.
Oh, okay.
It's not about Vance at all.
So it's a kids update.
But here's our Vance update for you anyway.
Okay.
In the last 4 days, he's eaten 3 whole tubs of margarine.
Oh,
whoa.
What brand?
Yeah. Lurpak.
Yeah. Oh,
it's expensive.
Yeah, hello. Ooh la la.
Don't look at me. Look at Vance. Yeah. 3 and it's ridiculous.
It's a lot. It's a lot of margarine. That's for sure.
In fact, I'll tell you something. Here's another Vance update for everyone.
Okay. Yeah.
This is gross. Don't listen if you don't like gross stuff. The other day.
Hey, just a quick apology to Dill. But
The other day, this is turned to Vance update. But the other day, I changed Elsie's nappy, a dirty nappy, like properly dirty, everything. Yep. And I turned around and her nappy was gone. I was like, I don't remember putting that in the bin.
Oh, no.
I don't remember putting it in the bin. When did I put that in the bin? I don't have any memory of that.
Vance.
I turned around, Vance is looking at me, licking his lips. Just like, the look he's giving me was like, thanks, mate. That was good. Just polished it off, the whole thing.
What do you mean polished it off?
The nappy and everything.
Like swallowed it.
Ate it whole?
Ate it whole.
The shitty nappy?
Yep.
Hugh, this is horrific.
Anyway.
I'm in shock. This is a family podcast. We are a mental health resource, and you've just brought trauma to everyone's day.
Anyway, I was like, that's disgusting. And then I was having my breakfast and I thought, is that safe? And I looked it up and it was like, you take your dog to the hospital, to the vet, not the hospital, to the vet straight away.
Definitely seems bad. Yeah.
No, well, nappies are full of like
The
crystals as
absorbent
well that
stuff would be
absorb.
the-
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, wasn't the nappy I was worried about. It was the chocolate filling that really got me. But yeah.
And so it said take him to the vet straight away.
Yeah.
It was a Monday morning, take him to the vet and explained what had happened. And the vet looked so angry at Vance. And she said, come here, and just like took him out the back. And they rubbed this thing in his nose that makes him, this is gross. This is getting really gross.
This is gross.
It makes him,
I know
like,
where this is going.
it makes him vomit it up straight away, instantly vomits. Everything in his stomach comes up.
Yeah.
And I
Three
just-
Lurpaks came.
Oh, no, this happened before the Lurpaks. There was no, it wasn't headphones.
The entire history of Vance's.
Yeah. The
Just
glasses, four pairs of headphones, 2 shoes. It's like a clown car.
My sanity.
Yeah. So, okay, so yeah.
So he vomits up this whole nappy, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the vet was like, it was a Monday morning and she was so angry. And I was like, God, she's so angry about this. Poor dog, could have been bad. Really dangerous. And she's like, are you happy, Vance? Are you happy?
No.
I was thinking, God, that's...
What do you think?
Oh, ma'am, no, I'm not. I've just eaten a pooey nappy. So, I mean, if you really want to know, it's been a pretty fucking rough start to the day. And thanks for asking. I just spewed my guts up. What else do you want to know? Jesus. I mean, to me, seems pretty obvious that I'm having a pretty shit day. Yeah, pretty lousy one. Hopefully it improves. But yeah, thanks for asking.
Anyway, she says, are you happy? She was so angry at him.
Yeah.
And she takes us out to reception and charges more than it would cost to buy a pair of Dr. Dre Beats headphones. It was seriously expensive for a 10-second consult. Anyway, I was going, why is she so angry? And then I thought, what? Actually, come to think of it, what a horrible way to start your week.
Yeah.
Making a dog vomit up a shitty nappy. I mean, that is, imagine that was what you're doing for you. That is just.
Yeah, you wouldn't put it on your LinkedIn.
No.
That's for sure.
Anyway.
Well, good update. So
No, that wasn't it. That
that's
wasn't
it. That's, oh, wow. Okay.
That's the lead up.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to be underwhelming the next bit. But the other night, Benji's he's 6 years old now, and he's asking interesting questions. And the question that came out of nowhere the other night as we're getting ready for dinner was, why do we need our balls? Why do we need ballies? He calls them ballies. Why do we need ballies?
I don't know, bullies, yeah.
And I looked at Penny, and then she looked at me as if to go, no, definitely yours.
Yes, it does seem to fall in your column. Yep.
Yeah. And I said, his response was so good. I said, well, if I didn't have my ballies, I wouldn't be able to have you. I wouldn't be able to have Elsie. I wouldn't be able to have Patrick.
Yep.
And Benji goes, or Vance.
Yeah. Don't think you're quite getting it. Because Benji, Vance is adopted. Oh, wow. Okay. We should move on to Dill. As much as I love the off-the-cuff Vance updates.
Also, we didn't name him Vance. I'd like people to know that.
Okay.
I love the name Vance, but I don't think I'm not for a dog, but we got him as a failed seeing eye dog. And anyway, that's it. I just want people going, terrible name.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Yep. Well, Dilruk Jayasinha, the perfect. No. So Dilruk Jayasinha, he is he's just a hilarious guy, as everyone knows, but also, as I've known for years, I've been friends with him for years, just the kindest, loveliest, thoughtful, beautiful person. I'm so stoked he's on the podcast, actually.
Yeah. To me, he's just, Josh and I having Sri Lankan,
Your dad's Sri Lankan.
heritage, thank you. Yeah, family. He's just, to me, he was just so Sri Lankan,
Yeah.
which to me is it's warm, it's kind, and it's loving. That's what he just had that about him. So much so that when we finished the interview, I wasn't done hanging out with him, and so I said, "Do you want to lift him to the city?" And he thought, "What a lovely guy, purely selfish." Just wanted to spend more time with him. He's just terrific.
Yeah,
He's
is
great.
lovely.
And he's so open and generous in this chat. Like talks about his like struggles with alcohol and you know a bunch of stuff. And it has been a tough run for him, but yeah, he was nice enough to talk about it. And his show is called Heartstopper, which is at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Get tickets for that.
Absolutely. Dilruk Jayasinha. We are very excited to be joined by well, Josh and I are particularly excited, Ryan also, but
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
But it's official. We're more excited.
Jeez, way to bump me out.
we have been joined by a fellow Lankan.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I say. So, Dilruk, I so clearly remember the first time I ever heard you speak, or the first time I heard your voice, and the first time I guess you kind of stepped into the world of
He was at the delivery. Okay, I thought you were somehow at the delivery of my mom's birthday.
No, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I'm probably old enough to do it, but I wasn't there. I was in my car listening to Hamish and Andy, and I can't remember what the segment was, but they had callers. Oh, by the way, so Dilruk is a comedian and an actor and a writer and all that. I think most people probably know that, but
Yeah.
We probably will have done an intro before this in the intro.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Utopia. Have you been paying attention? Really cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was in the car listening to Hamish and Andy. They had I can't remember what the segment was. But people are calling in, and you were one of the callers. This is back when you were an accountant.
Yeah.
So you weren't a comedian. You weren't a writer. You weren't a performer.
I hadn't started stand-up yet. I had sort of thought, okay, I need to get out of the accounting world, but I was still working at an accounting office.
And you were like literally under the desk, I think.
Yeah,
At
I had to call you. It was like a 4 to 6 show, so I think it must have been like 4:30 or whatever when I called. And my boss was in the other room, so I had to go like under the desk, and I'm on the phone, on the radio, waiting on hold. And then, the segment went to air because you never know if you're actually going to go to air or not, depending on the time.
What was
But
the segment?
It was so funny. Have you
So-
heard it?
I don't think I remember you
was
telling
so
me about
funny.
it, Dill, but I don't.
It was the topic was who were you better than? It's like someone talked about how they beat Roger Federer at golf or something like
yeah.
that. Someone who's great at something and how you know. And my story was that I'd done the Noosa Triathlon the year before, and I beat Moneghetti in the swim leg, right? So that was like my, who I beat. I was like, Moneghetti smashed me in the run, the 10K run, but the 1.5 swim, I destroyed him. So that was meant to be the segment. But what happened is Andy called me Bill. And then we referenced, I was like Dill, and then just the back, and then that just escalated from there. Before we even got to the topic, it just, we just went on this trajectory of Dill and all those sorts of things.
In his
And-
defense, it was probably written as Bill on his screen.
Yeah.
So he probably was reading Bill as opposed
And
to
I
just
think-
hearing Bill.
I just remember you saying, "I'm so happy to be on the phone to you," and they went, "All right," and you went, "No, just a phone in general. Happy to be on a phone. I love phones."
Yeah, because I was so nervous. So my hands are shaking like this because I was listening to them religiously from like pretty much the part of the reason. It was a big moment for me for two things. A, because I was a fan, but also they were part of the reason why I decided to get out of accounting because, like Melbourne Uni was where they met. I went to Melbourne Uni. I got drunk on Commerce Courtyard, all those sorts of them. Like, and now they're getting like paid to do, have fun. And I'm like, why am I going down this track? So I was really sort of like aspiring to those sort of things. And then to get on the phone, suddenly, all of a sudden, shit, I'm on. So my hands were shaking and I wanted to say, I'm really excited to chat to you guys. But I fumbled and said, I'm really excited to be on the phone. So then just trying to cover my tracks, just started making some gags about it. And so then it just took off from there. I know it was one of those things that, again, after hanging up, I crawled out of the desk shaking and being like, man, I should probably give stand-up a go.
It was so,
that's
I
awesome.
remember thinking I want to hear because you could tell Hamish and Andy were like, this guy's really good, and they tried to pad it out and make the interview go a bit longer.
Yeah.
'Cause everyone else was so quick. Who did you beat? And then you went
Right.
quite a while. And I remember when it finished, like, I wanted to hear more from that guy.
And it's so funny, like years later, when Rob Sitch was promoting Utopia on Hamish and Andy's show, Hamish messaged me going, hey, do you remember roughly what year your segment was in? Because we kind of want to play it for Rob. And I was like, well, it's I can tell you it was July 28th, 2010. Wednesday, probably around I think it was Seg 4. I was like, of course I'm going to remember exactly what date it was. And so they found in there, it was a really cool moment because, Rob, the segment they had on that was like, hey, you guys like Walking Dog who do Utopian, have you been paying attention, all that? Like you love to introduce new talent like, Stephen Curry and all these people you've done in the past. And you think you can claim Dilruk, but he's actually, the origin story is with us. And then they play the thing. So I'm having this surreal moment listening to the two radio guys that inspired me to get out of accounting, talking to the guy who created The Castle, my favorite Australian film of all time. And I'm like, and they're talking about me? Like, this is wild. This is so ridiculous.
They're arguing over you. They're trying to
claiming. Yeah, exactly. It was a very, very cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, you've had an amazing life journey. I've really enjoyed following you on Instagram. You're one of the people that when I watch, some people on Instagram, when you follow them, you have like an instant reaction of like, some people just, you don't feel good watching what they post. Other people, you feel really good. It just evokes different emotions. You're one of the people that when I sort of follow you, it just evokes this very positive and uplifting sort of emotion.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think that's by deliberate, I think for me. I kind of want it to be if I was someone who needed an escape, I'd want my page to be the thing that I kind of go to. Even if it's just, I'm pretty, cynicism isn't really part of my thing. So, and I get teased about how, earnest and sincere I am, but that's
very Sri Lankan.
Yeah, true. I never thought of that. You're right. Yeah. That is a bit of a Sri Lankan vibe. But my whole thing is like, I genuinely don't know how long comedy is going to last for me, how long life is. I'm like, I just don't want to get to that point that if it goes away, I don't want to be like, I wish I enjoyed it more while it was there. I just want to make sure like if every single time I'm like, if there's like even the other week I was just in Launceston and there was a poster, me, Tommy Little and Geraldine Hickey. And I was like, man, I want to take a photo next to it. Like I'm 13 years into comedy and I should be over seeing my poster up. I'm like, fucking cool. I'm just really excited. It's like I'm meant to be in an accounting office. So now there's a poster of me in Launceston. Fuck yeah. I've made it.
But I find that's an interesting thing with not only comedians, but I'd say anyone in the arts of any description really, is that no matter how successful you get and how far into it you are, like most people would look at you now, maybe you look at yourself like this and go like, you're fine now. You've got a career in comedy. You don't need to worry anymore about it ending. But I know a lot of people who are constantly worried about it being taken away from them.
Right.
Do you worry about that?
I don't think it's a worry as much as it's a perspective, I guess. So for me, I felt my career peak was November 2017. And it was because that was the first time my mum and dad saw me headline a comedy gig. And it was at the Comics Lounge in North Melbourne, which was the venue that I did my first ever gig at, in 5 minutes on a Tuesday night in front of 20 people. And I bombed. And here we are, 7 years later. Mum and dad are in the crowd. It was a sold out show. I'm the main act. The people are taking photos and stuff. And I took a photo with mum and dad afterwards, and there's this beaming look on their face that I was like, oh, that's what I've been chasing.
Yeah.
Like, like they've always been supportive and proud, but I think I just saw it there. Yeah. And then I went, okay, so, right. And there was a little bit of a moment of a bit of a crisis going, well, what now? If I've now kind of achieved what I guess deep down always wanted, because this is a bit morbid, but I knew I was going to do stand-up for the rest of my life. And in terms of it being successful, for me, the definition was if I can live off it, if I can pay rent with it and be a full-time comic in whatever capacity, that's my win.
That's kind of like the classic story of Jay Leno. So Jay Leno famously never spent his
Tonight Show money,
his TV money. So he would just put it all away and he would live off his stand-up money. So he would still, every weekend, he would go to Vegas and do stand-up. Yeah, really? But he was doing the Tonight Show, but his whole thing was like, I'm never spending the TV show money because I never want to rely on it.
So I didn't think we were going to go into this area, but because of that, I live off my stand-up. Anything I do with TV and radio goes into my Eubank account, which is called the Leno account.
That's amazing.
I literally just, it's called the Leno account because it's like, it's where all of it kind of goes to.
I want a Leno account. I just need the stand-up thing first to live off.
And for me, there are two reasons for that. The reason I do that is it's kind of like a savings kind of, backup, but also it keeps me hungry in stand-up in the sense that it makes me go, oh, well, hang on, you've had a lean month. So this, money from, I don't know, MasterChef or whatever doesn't count so that you have to focus on getting more gigs. So it keeps me working hard as a stand-up. But on the other hand, in terms of choosing projects for TV and radio, as much as I love it, I really do, it's not my favorite thing. So this way I'm making sure that I'm doing projects that I really enjoy. So, because in my head, the money is for retirement. So if they say, hey, you can do such and such show and this is what you're going to get paid, I'm going to be like, but in my head, I'm not getting that till I'm 60. So is it really that attractive as a financial prospect? So I'm like, nah, I want to do things that I only am actually willing to do for free. And I'm just chuffed that they're happy to chuck some money in the Leno account. You know what I mean?
That's
so
great.
it just kind of
Like enforced super.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's no super in, don't get me started on finance stuff. There's a whole other thing where I've told my management to only pay me 60% of my income.
yeah.
40% goes into another account, which is purely for tax. But, ex-accountant. What a surprise.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's what people listening, they're going to be like, that's what I aspire to. The 40% saving.
Not what I came to the Imperfects to listen to, but definitely what I aspire to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to mum and dad, I think that was it. The morbidity was about the fact that I knew that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. However, I am not good enough. I genuinely wasn't good at stand-up. And because I was a fan of comedy and stand-up comedy, I knew what I was doing wasn't good. So I didn't really ruffle any feathers. I was like, I just got to get better. And even if it takes 20, 30 years, this is all I'm going to do. But I deep down felt that, it's such a shame that mum and dad might not be alive to see it come good. So, because that's how bad my performances were. And then it sort of came together, and then the fact that they got to see me headline was I'm like, oh, that's it. So for me, that was like, I drew a line in the sand going, you've hit your peak. Everything from here is bonus territory. It doesn't mean I put my foot on the table and just relax. It's like I probably work harder than I did back then, but I'm coming at it from a place of, I get to do this. I don't have to do it anymore.
There's not pressure attached.
You know what I mean? It's just pure joy and, enthusiasm coming into it because I ticked the only goal I had.
So I'm fascinated by the starting and you're aware that you're not good at stand-up. And how long were you doing stand-up for knowing that you weren't good at it or believing that you weren't good at it?
I think I got my first laugh on the 12th gig. I think
12th gig?
I think it was when I organized a fundraiser and all my friends came. That was when I got my laugh. Look, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but in terms of a good 5-minute open mic set, I don't think I got that until 6, 7, 8, maybe middle of the comedy festival 2011. I think I had this story about getting mugged that started to get more consistency.
Yeah.
And up until then, it was just just little titters and things that.
How do you? I cannot even imagine. I mean, I've never done stand up. It terrifies me purely because I'm like, I know I'm not going to be good for a long time. So I haven't got the resilience to last.
There's a book called The Resilience Project. I'd really recommend it.
I've read it. It's
not as good as empathy.
Hasn't helped in the slightest.
It's actually an incredible book. Read it and listened to it. But really, I don't. So how do you this is because I reckon there'd be so many people, no matter if you're doing stand up or whatever, to do something. You love it. You love comedy. I know what it's like to love comedy. To then go I want to try it, and to then not be great at it for ages.
Yeah.
Are you just thinking? Do you have the belief in yourself that I'll get there?
Yeah. So for me, it's a mindset thing that I've recognized that I am genuinely, and this is not self-deprecating or anything like that. I can big myself up if I want to, but this is truth. I don't think I'm talented at anything. Anything that I do well today is off the back of smashing my head against the wall and figuring out how to get better at it.
So it's hard work as opposed to a gift.
For a gift. So it's really weird. The only thing that if talent is defined as something that you are disproportionately good at in terms of effort versus results, if that's what talent is, you put in less work and you get bigger results than most would. For me, weirdly, gratitude's the only thing that I've recognized is just the way my brain, as soon as something shit happens, it just starts finding ways to reframe it in perspective. My therapist is she wishes she could bottle it up and feed it to her clients because it just happens so automatically. but at the same time, because of that, I do develop it by doing a gratitude journal every day and things like that. But everything else is just purely I had to put hard work into it, and it started like
including numbers and accounting. Is that
everything? So weirdly, at the age of 9, my mom said she'll get me a Game Gear if I
what's a Game Gear?
It's like a Game Boy, but Sega introduced the thing, but it was color. Like, so Game Boy was the most popular and the best thing, but Game Gear was like color.
Yeah.
And wasn't as sexy.
I had an Atari Lynx.
Right. Okay. So so it was this thing, and my brother used to get like 90% average in school, and I was never close to it. And she said if I get 90%, she'll get me the Game Gear. And so at the age of 9. I was like, all right, how do I do it? And I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning to study because we lived in a very busy house in Colombo. Like there's 14 people in the one house, and there was one of the main streets in Colombo. So it's really noisy. So if you need peace and quiet, you had to wake up early or study late. So I gave her, I don't know where this came from, but I gave her like a little green rattle, like a toy, kid's toy. And I said, wake me up with this because it's so bizarre that it'll remind me I'm doing this for the Game Gear. So, because in the morning when you're waking up, you have no motivation, but this weird rattle made me go, oh, that's right, the Game Gear. I need to get up and study. So at 9, this is all me suggesting it. I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? Yeah. Anyway, then I didn't get it. I got like 85% or whatever. But that was the first time he told me, I put some effort into it and then got results.
So you didn't get the Game Gear though?
I didn't get the Game Gear. But what I got was the awareness that, effort means you get results. So then don't slack off on effort. And so that kind of then starts to the blueprint was kind of set up where it was studies for ages. That was like my thing. I used to just really work hard at studying. Then I came to Australia and then found out that I can finish a pint of beer in 4 seconds, and then became like the king of boat races at Melbourne Uni. And the other record was 11, a full jug of beer in 11 seconds. And
a jug of beer in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
A jug of beer in 4 seconds?
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous, but this is the thing. It's this weird...
What the hell?
Yeah, I know. There's footage. There's footage. That's where we did the timing.
I'm in shock. I can't understand that.
Yeah.
That's so much liquid.
Oh, it's awful. But it was also just... again, this is we're really deviating, but you
didn't like practice to get good at that, did you? I would suggest maybe this is a
as
gift.
a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. No, as a 19-year-old, because I never drank in Sri Lanka. I came here and didn't know anybody. I was walking around Melbourne Uni with like a bum bag because that's where my passport and the map of Melbourne Uni was in. And all of a sudden, we were like doing what's it called, pub crawls, and we were like lining up for ages. And then suddenly we get the pints, and they said, "Oh, we're moving to the next pub." And these random dudes I was chatting, he was like, "Oh, we just scull it." And I'm like, "I don't know what that means." They're like, "No, finish it as quickly as you can." And I finished the pint so quickly, they're like, shit, can you finish mine? And like, it became like a party trick. Everyone would buy drinks to watch me. So you go from being someone no one knew to suddenly your identity shifting into the guy who's like a week later, I was at the Armadale Hotel or, where they used to have the law reviews and things like that. And some rando comes up to me and goes, "Man, are you the Sri Lankan bloke that can scull beers?" And I was like, yeah. He's like, "Oh, can you scull mine?" And so it became this thing that I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. This is what I'm now known for." So
it became like the Bob Hawke of Melbourne Uni.
Yeah. Funny enough, yeah, because I was ended up being like the president of the Common Student Society at the same time as the University of Melbourne, the Union Clubs and Societies officer. So I was holding these two positions for an international student, which is hard because you get voted in because you don't really have a fan base. But because of the way I was on campus, I got voted in, right?
This is so Bob Hawke.
And Melbourne Uni was changing their whole model from 110 years of doing it in one way. They suddenly decided we're going to use this thing to catch up. And so they had meetings of how to do it, and they needed a student rep, and it was me. Because for the Common Student Society, I was the president, so I would sit at these meetings, and I'm going there going, I'm only here because I can scull pints. Like, this is such a flawed country.
What a lesson.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
gosh.
then I basically went from that into then getting the reason I bring that up is because it distracted me. I fell off because I was so focused on partying and drinking and things like that, because all of a sudden I'm getting attention, and girls who would never even look at me all of a sudden hanging out with me and things like that. So I got completely distracted, and then it goes back to and somehow end up in an accounting firm at KPMG. They fire me after 6 months in because I would interview so well They're like, because it was like, oh man, we need to get this guy because he's just really fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
But then when I did the job, it was pretty evident that I didn't know what I was doing, or at least I didn't have the same way I'd approach it. And the financial crisis had hit at the same time around 2009, I think it was. For me, that was the starting point of going, okay, I did accounting and I hated it because that's all I was chasing was money. I was like, I wanted money because then I can spend money and do cool shit.
Was there other than the money, was there a reason you chose accounting?
Because that felt where the most sort of accounting and finance is where the most money seemed to be.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, you study hard, you get a good job. You study hard, you get a good degree, get a good job, get the money, then you spend it.
Were you interested in comedy growing up though?
Yes, yeah, massively.
Right.
But it's just like in Sri Lanka, just like, oh, well, you know, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So when I got fired, that's where things started changing, where I purely did that for the money. What if I had all the money in the world? And there's a movie called Office Space. You see it with Jennifer Aniston and stuff. That question is in there. And it kept playing on my head going, yeah, what would my life be once I've bought cars and the house and all that? What would I want to do? And I'm like, I've always been fascinated with stand-up. And I was like, whether it's front of stage, off stage or whatever, I just wanted to be part of that world. Because during the comedy festival, I'd spend like $500 every year just watching shows. Like I was a fan of stand-up. And so I thought, yeah, that's probably what I'd end up doing. And I decided, okay, I'll give it a crack. And I started working for a small accounting firm. And September 21st, 2010, I went and did my first ever gig and bombed. And the reason I left it for so long, so it was about a year after having the awareness that I eventually did it, because I was scared, because I had a fear of public speaking because my whole body would shake. But also, I think I just, quote unquote, failed at accounting. And I thought, and I've had this stand-up dream or comedy dream deep down for years. And it was like, oh, my last thing I just was like protecting. And I was like, if I do that and I find out I'm shit at that, then I've lost that too. Because the accounting, getting fired was one of the most shattering identity shifts for me. Because I'd worked, my dad couldn't retire because he was paying for my uni fees and rent and all that for this type of life. And I'm saying, I don't think I want to do this. So it was a completely scary place to be. But then what happened is, as scared as I was to try stand-up, the thought of never giving it a go became a bigger fear. So I was like, it just basically, it was, again, both were painful. One was less painful, the idea of trying and failing. I thought I'll give it a crack. And I go and I did it and I bombed. And
how old were you at this point when you first
25,
did it? 25. Okay.
25, about to turn 26. And then it was that thing of realizing, oh my God, my worst fear was realized. I am shit at it. And I still loved it because I'd never done anything that I enjoyed the process of. So the thought of just sitting with the notebook, coming up with scribbling ideas, then typing it out, then memorizing it. Like in my first ever script, I think I'd put in brackets, turn left here.
So good.
Point to the crowd to the right-hand side. Like I'd had it all like mapped out. And I'd like, there used to be the MX back then,
Yes,
So when I take the train, to get comfortable holding the microphone, I'd roll the MX into a microphone thing and I'd like walk up and down Flinders Street with the thing because I was like doing everything I can to feel confident on stage. And I bombed. And then I realized, wait, I still loved it. My God, if I love it and I'm shit, imagine what would happen if you actually got good. So I went, it was the Tuesday night when I did my first gig. And then Wednesday I went to my accounting boss, the smaller accounting firm. And I said, I need a day off a week. And he's like, why? I was like, oh, I'm going to be a comedian. He's like, okay, what? Like, what, stand-up comedy? I was like, yeah. He's like, but isn't that at nighttime? I'm like, yeah, I know. But he's like, so just do it at night. I'm like, yeah, but I want one day. Like I wanted to commit one day into it. And he's like, but why would you sacrifice a day's pay to do something that's not going to get you any money? I was like, it's an apprenticeship. Don't worry about it. I'd like, psychologically. So I think in that first ever gig.
That question though is like from your boss.
He's everything.
Is so interesting because that is what most people are fighting against. Not in themselves, but in the world around them. Is the insanity of doing something that you're not getting paid for because you love it.
Yes.
Like to so many people, that is madness. Like why would you?
Exactly.
You crazy person.
It is and going back to your question, I guess, about, the idea of like it being bad and still sticking at it, it became this thing of going, the result didn't matter because it still mattered. Like it hurt every time I bombed on stage, but it wasn't as fulfilling as the fact that I'm even having a crack. For me, that was the thing that just pump me up about the idea that I'm at least failing at something I give a shit about, as opposed to succeeding at something that means nothing to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just started to go, I'm like, all right, in my head, this is what I'm going to do. So what would a comedian do? It's like they'd be at a comedy club every night. And I was like, okay, well, you're not getting gigs. So I'm like, yeah, you still can go watch the gigs. So the Comics Lounge is in North Melbourne on Errol Street. I moved house to the street behind.
Wow.
So that it was easy for me to get to the Comics Lounge every night, because I was like, well, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I might as well,
live close to
it, right?
But considering how driven you are and how much hard work you do, it doesn't sound like the commute was the obstacle that you needed to overcome. Oh, I just won't do this if I'm not one street away.
But I think that's the opposite, though. For me, the less barriers to entry to something is that then when things get harder, it's fine when you're motivated and you're lit up. Everyone's got, like, especially at the start of the year, big resolutions and stuff like that. But it's when shit's bad and you still do it. Those are the things that, how do you do things when you still don't want to do it? And so for me, I try and minimize as how many barriers to entry and stuff. So like even right now, I'm wearing activewear because I have a gym session later on the day. But I know if I'm not in it, I might be like, oh, I've got to put the clothes on and all that. So it's just like reduce the amount of resistance into the activity that matters most to you, you know?
Wow.
I'm really interested in how you mentioned your identity when you're a bit younger was beer or drinking beer. I'm interested in your relationship with alcohol, because I feel like the lifestyle of a comedian, especially if you feel like you're failing, I know there's a lot of alcohol, like before, afterwards, that kind of thing. Is that what was your relationship like with alcohol through?
So one of the things I've quit drinking 6.5 years now, and one of the things I remember, I'm proud of, I guess, as that 25-year-old, was that, so my whole body would shake and sweat before every gig, and I'd do it and it was exhilarated. So it was a weird thing to go put yourself through this every single time, and then somehow, like, I want to go back again. It was like a roller coaster. You're scared before it takes off, but when it's over, it's like, can we go again, you know?
Yeah.
So I knew the fears and all that will go down if I have a beer or a shot of tequila or something like that. I remember thinking, but I was like, I'm so proud of that 25-year-old who went, you know what? If you do this now, you will have to do this every single time you perform. Learn how to organically kind of calm yourself down so that that's not your hook, or that's not the thing you depend on. So I'd never performed drunk, but as soon as I finished, I would go batshit crazy. Like it was
Really?
the lifestyle was perfect for.
As soon as you got off stage,
As soon as I got off stage, not in the early days when you're an open micer, there was no red, but when I started like emceeing a comedy night or maybe doing the support spot or whatever, I would stay sober as soon as thank you guys, I'm Dilruk, whatever, go to the bar, get a stubby and a shot of scotch. So I'd shot the scotch, then the stubby, and I'd have like 6 of those in before the headline is done. And then as an MC, have to outro and everyone, how goes Ryan Shelton, guys? It's so good, you know? And because I was like, my job's done now, I just need to say goodnight, you know, and would write myself off. And then when the career started, profile started going up, I would have clubs that I was not even performing at, but I'd show up and they're like, oh, Dill's here, what do you want? And just get free beers. And it was like just all the things that you hope for as a kid, as a 19-year-old, when you're scrambling for, cheap booze, all of a sudden your career is the reason you're getting free grog. Yeah. It was amazing. But the problem was 2016 is when I went full time with comedy, and then I had no reason to wake up till 2 p.m. essentially. So, but like, I still kept doing my accounting job little by little. Like I did 4 days a week, then I dropped down to 3, then to 2. And I'm really like, my boss was so good to allow me that. And funny full circle is that my old boss is now my accountant.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
So I do get a little thrill when I say, do this for me, please.
Oh, that's nice.
I just wanted to know how much of a problem the alcohol became. Like, as you say now, you're not drinking at all.
Yeah, so it became a huge problem. I would just get completely blackout drunk, and it was this pattern of just waking up in the morning and just this self-hate of going, what did I say, what did I do? And there was like 3 tiers to the regret. The first one is you wake up and you remember it and you regret it. The next one is you don't remember it, someone tells you, and you're like, oh, fuck, I did that, didn't I? Or I have to call up this person and apologize. And the third one was they tell you and you still have no memory. And that third tier started happening so often. And then it got to the point where I'd go home, I'd be at the comedy club or whatever, and I'd get like a takeaway 6-pack or something like that, and just by myself at home, just keep the party going, chucking on YouTube, like belting out CS Chandelier as I'm just drinking. And I'd fall asleep, and a couple of times I fell asleep in bed with a bottle of wine and stained the bed. And I was like, oh, that's bad. So I'd flip the mattress over. And then it happened again 2 weeks later. And I was like, oh, fuck, oh, whatever. I was like, I remember my thinking going, oh, I should buy an expensive mattress. That way I won't do this in bed. And I'm like, idiot, why don't you just quit drinking? Like,
That seems crazy.
That's it, yeah. But it was because the idea of this, so at that point would have been, I don't know, 12 years of drinking heavy.
12 years.
Yes, I think 19 to, yeah.
And what had that done to your mental health in the meantime? How was that? Like, you've got this...
I wasn't aware that I even needed to prioritize mental health. And so 2016, it was really bad. I was behaving very grossly and was feeling shame on a daily basis. And then I just kind of went, there's enough's kind of enough, I guess, in a way. There was so many what should have been the rock bottoms beforehand that, I don't know, it's really weird for me to now be at the space that I'm in now and see all the warning signs that were there, but you just don't see it when you're in the thick of it. And 2016, I just said, okay, I'm going to quit drinking, but I need help with this. So I started seeing a therapist, the same therapist I see now, and started to unpack where this comes from. Day one, she said something along the lines of, oh, it's clear to me that you're not a confident person. And I was like, this chick's crazy. Like, I was just, performing in front of, like, literally, I think I did like the Queen's Clip Music Festival the weekend before that in front of 1,000 people. I was hosting the show. I'm like, how can you call me unconfident? She's like, oh, no, that's like charisma, bravado, and charm. You've got that. That's fine. But talking about confidence being deep down, do you really rate like yourself? And then I was like, ooh, fuck, yeah, okay, tell me more. And then, we just started unpacking it, and it all comes back to, just this feeling that I'm not good enough, because it starts with, my mum is Muslim, my dad is Buddhist, and for some reason they sent me to a Catholic school. So every step of the way, so I grew up dad worked overseas. Mum and dad are still together, but dad worked overseas, so we grew up with mum's side of the family. So that's where the 14 people in this big house in Sri Lanka, and my brother and I were the only non-Muslims. And from a very young age, my grandma, who was a very strong Muslim, would remind us that, I love her and she was a gorgeous woman, but she was raised in a particular way that gave her some bad ideas, including one which was to tell me as an 8-year-old that she has to go to hell because she let me grow up in the house as a non-believer. And I was like, well, that's not the story I want to hear. So
this guilt is so heavy. I have to carry this around forever?
Yeah. And so then I'd go to the Catholic school for any other Lankans there, St. Peter's College, and I'd have to and feel like a minority there, and then come to Australia where I'm a minority there as well. So every step of the way, I never felt good enough. Like there was always this desperate attempt to try and fit in when all I want to do was just belong, just feel like I'm accepted for who I am and no other reason. But so coming into Australia as this outsider and then finding booze to mask that fear, and all of a sudden you're like, getting invited to parties and skipping the line at the nightclub and all this sort of things, just lighting up all those feelings like, this is where I belong, when all it was me just trying to fit in and fit the mold of whatever I thought people liked about me. And as soon as that was like, that penny dropped, it was huge, because I was like, I never would have framed myself as an unconfident person. So then spent a good year of just trying to remind myself that my worth isn't reliant on external validation, that there is things that I do that make me a good person. And especially at the time, I was about 125 kilos as well. So even my material in stand-up was how much of a drunk, fat pisshead I am. So this thing that was quote unquote a flaw when I was in high school and early years of uni is now the thing that's giving me fame and money and paying rent off it. So it was this weird poison chalice where I'm like, I'm glad I reclaimed the story. I use my flaws as a way to, win people's approval. But every night, by making fun of myself about those things, it was reinforcing that idea that, see, they're all laughing because you're a piece of shit and you're not deserving of love and respect because you're a drunk pisshead. Why would they respect you? But good for you for knowing it at least.
Yeah.
So then it was like, oh God, I've like really trapped myself here, because now the 95% of my material is about, getting drunk and shitting my pants in public or whatever, or the weight, the fat jokes. So then in 2017, I made a conscious effort to not make a single fat joke. And I'd quit drinking at that point, but I didn't talk about it. I always try to give myself a little bit of time before I talk about a heavy topic on stage. 2017, 0 fat jokes. And I was like, but what do I talk about if I'm not, this is my hook and stuff. I quit drinking and I don't want to be told fat jokes. I'm like, I'm still brown. We got that still. I can still talk about my cultural stuff. So I did a show about, having a Muslim mom and a Buddhist dad and stuff. So I'm like, there's heaps of material, and kind of told myself going, there's more to you than that identity that you're latching onto so desperately, because that identity was, when it served me, it was a great servant, but it was a terrible master, because all of a sudden I'm like trying to keep that vibe going by being the pisshead on podcasts and things like that. So it was like a little by little unpacking of and redefining what my identity is,
Gosh, what a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Was it scary? Because I imagine that the way you've just framed it there, the alcohol kind of gave you everything you were lacking for a while. It gave you an identity. It welcomed you into a group of people. It made you gave you false confidence.
Yep.
It gave you comedic material. It's kind of provided you with everything you were looking for. When you and your therapist, or you by yourself, decided it's not working for me anymore, was it scary?
Yeah, because I just didn't think there was a version of my life where I didn't get drunk, because it was so embedded in who I was. I just couldn't see how could I go to, like a friend's birthday party and not drink? How could I go to a winery and not drink? Like there's, spring racing there's so many different things that I told myself were important for me to be at. And in order to be there, I have to get drunk, and then I have to, and this is what I'm known for, and this is why people like me. So if you take that away, you're boring, and everything that's funny and people celebrate about your work is based on being, an obese pisshead. So if you take that away, you're fucked. You can't pay rent anymore. Like that was terrifying in that sense.
Can you remember the first time you went to something and said, "No, I'm not"? When someone was like, "Here, skull my drink," or something, and you said, "No, I'm not doing it."
That's interesting, because I reckon I did dabble in like sober October and those types of things. I think I remember doing Dry July. This was, I don't know, maybe 2014, I started doing comedy as well, I think. Oh no, it was a bit earlier. Anyway, regardless, I did Dry July, 0 alcohol. 1st of August, got so drunk. That's right, because my mates some of them were still at uni. I went to this pub that's on that corner. You know that awful roundabout near Flemington Road and all that? Yeah. There's a pub called The Bedford. Yes. I don't know if it's there still, but anyway, I went there for a traffic light party on a Monday night while I'm still an accountant. Like, honestly, what a sad state of affairs.
That's a sitcom.
Oh my God.
What colour t-shirt were you wearing?
Green.
Oh, yeah.
I think I dressed up as Shrek. That's how desperate I was.
Yeah, I love the mindset. It's like, all right, chocolate party, want to pick up Shrek.
What could be more green? Hulk, maybe, but I can't, doesn't
and
feel
what's sexy?
Sexiest outfit. There's got to be a sexy Shrek outfit.
The green M&M.
Yeah.
But green M&M. So I got so drunk that blacked out. I woke up and a bouncer was holding me down. And I'm not a very violent drunk. Like, in fact, there's been multiple times I got kicked out of things that on the way out, I chatted to the bouncer so friendly. There's like, man, you're fine. Come back in. Like, I got let in. Even the police, I got kicked out of, I think, Derby Day or something. And as I was walking, they're about to put me in a divvy van. I'm like, gentlemen, I'll be honest with you. I can see you're doing a job. The train station's right there. If you trust me, I promise you I'm just going to jump on the train, because let's be honest, I said to them, let's be honest, there's way more piss cunts in there. And he's like, you promised to get on the train. I'm like, I swear to you, watch me. I'm crossing and getting on the train. And they're like, all right, you can go. So I get like, because I think maybe growing up in Sri Lanka, you're so scared of authority. You don't muck around with police and teachers and all these things, that as soon as authority kicked him, like, yep, you got me. Anyway, so I was surprised that I woke up with this bouncer hovering over me. I was not a violent guy. And he's like, man, do you remember do you know what you've done? I was like, fuck no, tell me. And turns out I'd gotten kicked out, and I'd been like, yep, cool, you got me, well done. And I'd left. But then I'd remembered, there's a beer garden at the back. I can jump over the fence and get back in there.
Yeah.
And I was, 125 kilos. There's no way I can scale a fence. But there was a car parked in front of the fence and I'd stood on it and dented it, trying to jump onto the fence, and the car belonged to the bouncer. And so he's like, yeah, you owe me $3,000 for this. I'm like, and so I was like,
Were
here's
you
my
dressed as Shrek?
Look, I think I conflated two stories. I don't know if this was that particular, but
Let's
it was
just say you were,
something.
'cause it's very good.
Let's just assume it is. But yeah, I might have been just in the accounting outfit as well. But the
accounting outfit,
which is a suit jacket and a tie,
accounting costume.
The costume, the identity of accountant, the Ben Affleck movie. That's what I dressed up as. No, but so I gave him my number. I said, yeah, of course, man, I fucked up. Sorry about this. It's awful. Blah blah blah. I went to my boss, and I don't have $3,000. And I spoke to my boss, and I said, hey, I'm in a bad space. I don't have the money. He's like, look, yeah, we'll front the money and we'll just deduct, whatever you're comfortable with from your pay over time, and you pay that way. And it was such a huge relief, right? I think it was $2,000 was the amount. And then I went a few days later to meet up with this bouncer because he had the receipt from the panel beaters or whatever. He's like, oh yeah, it's $400. And there's this huge relief that, oh my God. And I'm such an idiot that rather than focusing on, I have just spent $400 on something really stupid, my brain was like, man, you just saved $1,600.
Yeah.
So I went and bought like new headphones and DVDs and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh fuck, I'm in the money here. This is great. And those are those little moments along the way that I'm like, that should have been rock bottom, or that should have been. And there's different. Right. I woke up at St. Vinny's once not knowing why I'm there. Like just, like literally just waking up in the emergency room. No one I know is around and I'm there. So there's all these little markers. But when I finally quit, I think my why I'm quitting was so strong. I was just so embarrassed at the person I was becoming and the reputation I had that I was just like, this is the pain of that was so, it always comes back to pain and pleasure for me. Like the pain of quitting drinking was always difficult, but the pain of this identity continuing was way worse. So I lent to the less pain again, and I went, okay, I'll just got to do this. And it's really funny how like 3 months in, you forget your reasons of why you started, and it kind of goes, was I that bad? I think I was fine. And I was like, no, come on, man. You know how this story ends. And so now 6.5 years later with zero booze, people still ask me going, oh, would you have like a couple of glasses of wine or something like that? I'm like, I know I can today and stop at 2. And maybe in 6 months I'll do the same, but then there'll be like some point where the 2 becomes 3 and 3 is fine. And then suddenly the 3 becomes 4 and the brain that was operating on 0 versus 4 is different. So once I hit 4, it was 10 plus. Limo told me a sentence which resonated with me that he has never had between 4 to 10 drinks. It's either less than 4 or 10 plus. And I was like, fuck, that's me. You know what I mean? Like I really don't have that handbrake. So it was really tough to just let go of this idea that I'm not that dude anymore,
I used to drink quite a lot too. I still do from time to time, but it only occurred to me recently when I was quite hungover that I hadn't sort of marinated in the feeling of shame and guilt and all those negative emotions for quite a while. And then it occurred to me, God, I was getting this drunk 3 nights a week for 8 years. Yeah. And what the cost on your mental health, or mine, sorry, I should just only talk about myself, but the cost on my mental health for all that time, because I was struggling with a lot of things, I thought they were stupidly, and it's so obvious, but at the time I thought they were separate. But it had only recently occurred to me that I was spending half my week marinating in guilt and shame and not allowing myself any form of recovery. Did you notice a difference in your sort of self-talk and identity from spending your life hungover to not? Or
it didn't kick in for a while. I think I'm someone who's very evidence-based. So until I felt I had enough undeniable proof to myself that I have made real change, I don't think I let go of those feelings of guilt and shame. Do you know what I mean? Especially in the phrase of shame and guilt. I think it was Brené Brown trying to define the difference between the two, where guilt is you're ashamed of the actions, or you regret the action, whereas shame is you are a bad person. So I'm trying to learn how to go, that was my behavior, that was bad. Me as the person just had wrong ideas and wrong upbringing. Like, we grew up with 4 alcoholics in our family, you know what I mean? And they're weirdly all on the Muslim side, which you never would pick, but my uncles would be blackout drunk from 5 p.m. every day, and that was normal for me. So I'm like, of course I need to, it's this real weird thing of like, I don't need to carry the blame, but it's still my responsibility to fix it. Like why I am the way I am is not my fault, quote unquote, but it's still up to me to do the work. And it sucks because you feel like you got dealt a certain hand that you didn't want, but people get shitty hands or dealt all the time. If you wallow in, like people have got worse hands than me that got dealt and provided themselves a better life. So where the fuck do I get off just saying, oh, look, a couple of things didn't go right for me in my childhood, so I'm angry at the world. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, it's still my responsibility to fix it. So in terms of that feeling, that's what's hard, because I think in any change, any habit change, there's such a gap between the pain of the new behavior versus the positive result. Yeah. So even weight loss, the idea of going for exercise or restricting, junk food, that's a difficult pain to deal with. And unfortunately, the result is in the future. The present tense is just, discomfort, and you don't see the results for a while. So it's just a case of trying to find a way to bring, the future pleasure, or in health, it's what, like say, okay, heart disease or diabetes or whatever. That's all, 50-year-old Dill's problem. That's what I was telling myself at least. Whereas the reality is like, how do I make that problem a present day problem and try to, push through the immediate pain, trusting that it's going to lead to a better result in the future.
Well, on that, last year...
I said all that. I'm going, fuck, what a humble pie that I have to eat now.
Well, I mean, your comedy festival show is called Heartstopper.
Yeah.
And it's about you having a heart attack last year.
I know. It's so because I had so my show in 2021 is called Victorious Lion, which is a direct translation of Jayasinha, right? It's nice, cool thing. And Dilruk translated in Sinhalese is shining tree, which was really boring to me.
So.
Because you're Bollywood.
Yeah, I just got a sense it's some sort of shining tree. Yeah. You scream shining tree.
But then because mum's side of the family is Indian, I was like, oh, look, let me see. And I don't tell people about the fact that I'm half Indian because of the cricket. I don't want to be associated with Kohli's mob. So it turns out in Hindi, Ruk means stop and Dil means heart. So Heartstopper was a kind of cute. And the gag in 2021 was, which is an appropriate name because it was at the time was about me being single, and stuff like it's an appropriate name because, and my cholesterol is through the roof and blah, blah, blah. It made a joke. Literally 12 months later, during the comedy festival, I had a heart attack. And I was like, fuck, I predicted it at the age of 37.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where were you? What was happening?
I was at home. It was a Wednesday, I think it was 6th of April. And just had this weird little pinch in my left arm in like my bicep. And I was like, fuck, is that bicep curls? Did I do too much? I'm like, well, hang on, I haven't been to the gym in 8 months. So I don't think it's the bicep curl. But I was like, well, it could have been. This delayed onset, whatever they call it, the DOMS. I'm like, it's probably kicked in 8 months later.
I should have done the 8 month later warm down. Idiot.
And so I genuinely went, oh, that's weird. I'll, just relax. And then I started feeling a little tightness in my chest. Tightness, but like the pain scale was like 1 or 2, like so minimal. It was like a child could pinch you and it would hurt more.
Yeah.
But the feeling in my chest was like when you swallow water and it kind of gets a bit stuck and you feel like, oh, that didn't go down right. And I thought, oh, you know what? I haven't meditated today. Let me go do my meditation. And I started doing my meditation and I went, wait, why am I diagnosing myself that this is fine? I'm not a doctor. Like, go to the doctor. Because it's really bizarre how soon as it kicked in, I was like, I should go to the doctor. Immediately, my brain went, you're weak. Harden up, princess, grow up hair. Like, oh, don't go to the doctor with a little pinch in your arm.
Right.
All that just flooded through. And I went, nah, screw this. Like, mum and dad have both had heart attacks and both have had bypass surgeries. I'd rather be someone who's, alive and called a sook than someone who's, just covered it up. So I went there, I walked to the doctors and because
How
I was,
far?
I think about 3 blocks or so. It wasn't too bad, but my GP, he said, look, your BP is a bit, blood pressure is a bit high, but your ECG is fine. just to make sure I go to the emergency room. So I was back at St. Vinny's, my old haunt, where I woke up when I was drunk.
Dills!
Like, cheers. Norm! so I go in, and then I'll skip through some of the more, but basically, you see me quickly. The doctor chats to me for about 15, 20 minutes, asking me questions and stuff. He goes, look, based on your symptoms, the fact that you're talking, your pain scale. He said the ECG, his words were, the ECG is beautiful. Like, he's like, it looks amazing. It's like, so usually in a cardiac event, they would see some sort of damage, but your heart's pumping so well, this is probably psychosomatic. So what we'll do is, though, just to put your mind at ease, we'll do a whole bunch of usual tests like x-rays and blood tests and stuff, just to kind of cover our bases, but you can relax, you're fine. It's probably stress of the comedy festival, lacking sleep, too much coffee, whatever. Just, it's like, and he said psychosomatic doesn't mean you're imagining it. You're feeling what you're feeling, but there's no real medical reason for it, and you did the right thing. He's like, whenever we wish more people did what you did, so don't feel bad that you're here. Put my mind at ease. So then I just, was there in the waiting room with my girlfriend at the time, and then we suddenly didn't get this. He comes in about an hour later going, oh, actually, we're going to have to keep you a bit longer, keep you overnight. And I was like, overnight? That's a bit, something's up. And I was like, so what was the situation? And apparently there was like this enzyme that they were testing for in my blood called troponin that shows up during a cardiac event. And they can only test it again in 6 hours. And they tested it in 6 hours, and they found out that that it had gone up. So that's when they were like, okay, we think there's something off here. And it's quite funny, so because they have to do a thing called an angiogram, which is they pump you with a dye to see if there's any blocks in, and you need to fast
in your arteries or in your
arteries, and you need to fast for 12 hours or whatever. So he's like, don't eat anything after 10 p.m., but you can have dinner before that. And I remember asking him, I was like, oh, so should I like have like a salad or something? He's like, oh, it's too late for that. You can't cram for this test. And so,
if I have a carrot, am I cool?
And so I had this and my coping mechanism is in when I'm sad, I overeat. Like, that's where this is like something that I had it with booze, but booze I can go cold turkey, cut it completely out, so I'm on top of it. But with food, it's just always clipping at my toes every time. So I just, I there's a photo of me that I posted on Instagram of 2 Philly cheesesteaks with the heart monitor next to me as I'm doubling down on it, because I'm just scoffing and eating my feelings, because that's the mechanism that kicked in. And the next day they found, they did the angiogram, found a 80% block in the artery that's some lower anterior, something, LAD, I don't know, whatever. But the doctor was very excited to tell me, actually, the nickname for that artery is the Widowmaker.
Oh, like, jeez.
Mate, what he's like, oh, just, it's a little joke we have.
Yeah, hilarious.
Thought you could use it, I guess he was thinking. But, man, it was terrifying. And it was this funny thing that I remember, I was just switching between these two mindsets, which is one going, I'm 37 after having lost like 35, 40 kilos, ran a marathon, continuously, focus on my fitness and my nutrition, and I still had a heart attack. Why the fuck did I quit drinking? I should just get back on it. And then immediately as well, at the same time, realizing that because my cardio fitness was so good, it's why I'm alive, because the block was there, but the heart was still so strong. It kept pushing through that block. So that's why I didn't pick up on any of the other things. And for me, this was a big moment to realize, like, oh, I truly have. And again, we talked about gratitude. As soon as the doctor told me, like, my girlfriend said it was really bizarre. I was like, okay, cool. I need a moment. And I walked out. And then 5 minutes later, she comes in and finds me in the garden of St. Vinny's, and I'm there with my notebook writing out a list of why this is a good thing, because I'm like just kicked into that mechanism of going, why is this good and why is? And one of the things was going, I'm glad they found it now, because this is absolutely the type of thing that 5 years from now would have been more fatal, So it's funny the emotions you go through. So fear, obviously, because you're going to face your mortality in multiple ways. A, the heart attack, and knowing my parents, what they went through. But then they also, to do the angiogram, you have to sign, saying there is a chance that you could die during the procedure. And are you okay with it, basically?
Oh, geez, what a decision.
Yeah, so exactly. So I just, I don't want to put my name on it. I don't sign Nazim Hussain. No, I just. Like, this is probably the same guy that got away with it.
It's a Sri Lankan comedian, yeah.
Ex-accountant turned comedian who doesn't drink. Same guy.
That's amazing.
So no, I obviously, but you're dealing with that, and because of COVID, I was, no one like was allowed in, and it was like in the car. I was in the public system, so there was like 4 other beds with 80-year-olds. Like that was another reminder going, this is where my body's at, is matching these fellas, So it was an awful feeling, and there was embarrassment, weirdly, that I was carrying a lot. Like I was just embarrassed that I had such a public, story of losing weight and becoming healthier and all this, and now I have to eat like, humble pie, and I still had a heart attack. Especially because in 2019 it was about my weight loss, and the way I did it was, I do 6 days of eating lean, and then the 7th day go nuts and call the show cheat day, and then brag about how much I could eat on my cheat day, and then here we are 3 years later having a heart attack show.
But it's like, your story is your story, and like how much, like how soon after you've been diagnosed with like, the arteries 80% blocked, or the, whatever it was you said, that you realize, oh, this is serious. How quickly did you think I can talk about this on stage? Like how quickly were you like, this is content?
That is a great question, because the reason...
Because this is what your show's about.
This show is about that, and it really... I don't know how quick it kicked in, but I guess maybe now I'm at that point where no matter what I'm going through, a part of the gratitude is going, well, at least it could be material one day. That I have that. But I didn't kind of like lean into that yet. I just sat with the fear and I didn't, I think I'm getting better at recognizing when comedy helps me and when it doesn't. And running straight into it would have been made it worse, which is brings me to the point I was at in October last year when I had to decide what next year's show is going to be and whether I lean into this or not. Cal Wilson gave me a phrase because I said to him, I'm really scared about talking about this because I don't know if I've really kind of healed from it. Like it took a while for my therapist was trying to get me to label it as trauma. And I was kind of like feeling bad to call it traumatic because I know people have worse trauma and somehow this mentality of that your story isn't as valid because it's not as bad as someone else's. And it's just sort of this weird thing. No, I'm fine. And, I'm aware that I have that. I was like, but I still don't feel like calling it trauma. But eventually I realized, you know what? You did face your mortality. You're dealing with a whole bunch of insecurities, the embarrassment, all of that. So I was saying to Cal, and Cal she said like, yeah, people want to see your scars, not your wounds. And that really struck a chord with me going, yeah, you're right. When a scar, it's a good story. But when it's when you're still healing, it's pussy and full of blood and it's awful to look at. You don't want to. Really so I was like, I really don't know if this is the time for me to talk about this. But then I realized it's all I'm thinking about. Like it's literally the thing that's constantly on my mind every time I sit down to write. It's about the heart attack and thinking of the Widowmaker line or, the thing about trying to have salad at 10 p.m. And so I'm like, well, this is where my brain's taking me. I might as well use it. I'm not fighting. It's almost like I've never surfed in my life, but there's so many surfing analogies with how I work, which is like, if this is the wave that I'm getting, then I got to ride it. And I can't fight against it because then I'm going to get thrown and bashed. But if I learn to balance myself with it, then I can get something good out of this.
Don't resist. Yeah.
Don't resist. So I did. And I think eventually why I even posted about it, because again, I was like, given what you said about my Instagram, I try to keep it positive and give you the iceberg of when things are going good in my life and not really, there's enough kind of doom and gloom sort of stuff out there that I was like, let this be a little escape for me being silly and doing dumb, puns and videos and stuff. And I thought, no, fucking, I'm going to put this out there purely because of what happened to me where I so close to ignoring it. Like the doctor kept saying, the fact that you came is ridiculous. Like that the pain scale was so low, the symptoms were so mild, but this was going to be something huge in 5 years' time. And, because at 37, who would think to go a heart attack? You're like, yeah, it is probably the bicep curl from 8 months ago,
Yeah.
But so I posted about that and I explained that saying, just, don't listen to that voice that's telling you you're a soft cock if if just to get it checked out. And man, it was like, I think I posted on the Friday. On the Sunday, I get a message from this girl, 27 years old, goes to the gym 6 times a week, super fit, had a pain just down, just sort of in her lower upper back or something like that, and felt very different to any kind of muscle pain. And she's like, you know what? I saw Dill's post, fuck it, told her boyfriend, get me to the hospital. And yeah, it turns out she had a block to her brain, and she was in hospital for like 2 weeks after that or something like that.
Oh
my
So that story by itself made me go, okay, I'm going to talk about
It's
it.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's just 10 minutes of the show is about it, just letting people know to not ignore, like forget about like deal with the embarrassment of being a sook or a hypochondriac or whatever later. Like we're so lucky we live in a country that has healthcare provided for us. Yeah, I felt like that was the purpose for me to then share this story. So it's that sort of thing that I went, okay, I don't have to carry this responsibility. It's not my job, but if I can, why not? You know what I mean? If I am able to extract, do what I do, you know what I mean? Like take something that's painful to me and find a way to make it palatable and share with people and hope in, you know, if one person, it's like a bonus thing. You hopefully people are laughing, and on top of that, there's also a little something to take away in that way.
I might be labouring this analogy way too much here, but it just occurred to me with that line about the wounds and scars. There is a point with a wound that you have to expose it to oxygen.
Yeah.
Like you can't just cover it up under a bandage the whole time. And there is a point once it's healed a bit, you sort of open it a bit and let oxygen get in there and dry it out.
100%.
And that's kind of...
But at the same time, you kind of want to do that in private, but in front of a professional. You don't just walk around publicly going, hey, pay me, $40 a ticket to show me your wounds.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is a point once the wound's been there for a while where it starts to heal and it's looking a bit better. It's not healed yet. You've done a lot of the work privately, but it got to a point where I reckon I can expose this a little bit to the public.
Exactly. And I think take that sentence out of context. This is great. I think I'm ready to expose myself to the public.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're spot on.
It's got Hugh.
Really? I think you're spot on, though. It is that thing of like...
think about Dill exposing himself to the
I was
public.
actually picturing him because a lot of his posts are along like near the Botanical Gardens, like near the Yarra after your
God,
runs.
yeah.
I was even picturing where you're doing it.
That's next year's show. But I think you're spot on. It is part of healing to be able to share, because you don't want to be sitting with these thoughts in your head. So my process with that is initially like a journaling type thing where I just do a brain vomit every morning. Well, if I can every morning, but just 3 pages, just whatever I'm feeling. And there's
3 pages of what's in your head. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I got it from Julie Cameron, Artist's Way. There's a book called The Artist's Way or whatever. She does this thing called Morning Pages, and I didn't read past chapter 2. I'm like,
I
got it.
First chapter, I think
Not many people do.
yeah, but that Morning Pages has been a game changer for me, because it's almost like a brain vomit and then I'm able to then show up for friends and family in more like I've gotten out whatever shit's in my head for the most part. And so, so that's the first thing, is privately exposing the oxygen to the wound, just getting it out there. Then it's closer groups of people that you can trust with this vulnerability and this sharing. And then the third step is, I would say, for me, is a podcast format where there's no pressure for it to be humorous. You can just be honest and share that. And then for the fourth step would be, all right, here's the true story. Let me throw some stand-up in there to make it palatable for that particular format. But because for me, if it's not funny, I haven't punched in my card for work. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do a TED Talk because it's the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, not Feelings Festival.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, it has to still have the funny, and if it doesn't have the funny, then I'm have to work harder at it, or just doesn't stay in the show.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how it goes in that exposure of like to oxygen initially to yourself. Let yourself see what you're seeing, because again, maybe therapist before loved ones. I'll put that in there. Sorry, yeah, because then I can again with my therapist share without any feeling of judgment, because her pure job is to just try and make me better. So I don't have to worry about her thinking bad of me or what that means for our relationship or whatever. Because with friends and family, like even telling mum and dad, about the heart attack was awful, because you're your parent and how much you want to protect your child, and then your child who's sort of looked like he'd come good is now got this, and like I almost want to say, yeah, your shit genetics fucked me up. No, I didn't say that, but like, and obviously they've got their heart conditions and stuff, and my poor dad, like after I told him, he fainted on the FaceTime, and I'm in hospital watching this going, all right, well, I can't deal with this right now. Can you like sort it out, So it was such an awful little moment that I was like, I can't do this. I can't talk about this. I haven't healed or whatever. But I'm like, you know what? I think there's a little spark in me that wants to make it work now, because it's sort of goes back to that thing with the 90% average thing. Like, okay, if I put the effort in, the result will come. The result is something that matters to me. If it matters to you, then the effort doesn't mind. You know, the same thing with why I'm bombing in stand-up. It's painful to be there, but the end sort of the fact that I can actually just sit there and find that catharsis of thinking about this and finding the humor in it. And it's sort of, for me, I find it, if you've ever read Harry Potter, there's one of the characters is a boggart or something like that, that shows you the scariest thing you can think of. But the trick is to try and put it in a humorous context, and all of a sudden it becomes less scary. So for me, that's kind of how I've kind of approached a lot of the pain and darkness. My thing is like, how can I take my thing that I was most afraid of at one point, whether it was quitting drinking or, you know, getting healthier, and then find a way to spin it in a funny, humorous way, but not to dismiss the gravity of it as well, because that's another mistake I used to make as a new comic, is quickly running to the joke without actually giving the whole truth behind it, and almost diluting the pain behind it, and finding a way to do those things is something that is an area I like to talk about. Like, so.
Well, it's how you react to it, isn't it? It's how you.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, I had a bit about calling, like I had to call Lifeline during the pandemic, and it was really, I felt really important that I'd shared this, because no one would pick it. If you saw my Instagram, no one would pick that I had such a dark moment. But I was like, the way I look at it is, my audience is me watching, me as a comedy fan who's still in accounting watching. And I'm like, what would that guy want to know about this dude he's been watching every year? And I was like, this is such a big thing. I would love if I heard someone tell me that, hey, it's okay to put your hand up and ask for help. So then finding a way to talk about that in a stand-up setting is like, you know, something that I love the puzzle of. Like, how do I tell people I called a suicide helpline without diluting the story, or with punchlines that are flippant, but also at the same time not making the audience feel uncomfortable. And that's the kind of the area that I kind of enjoy playing in now.
It's incredible. I mean, like, I feel like just people just telling your story. I mean, I know I've never done stand-up, and I can see how you're like so fascinated by process, and you're very analytical in how you kind of go about what you're doing. But there is also something, yes, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, don't show the wounds, show the scars. But there also is something very powerful in showing the wounds sometimes to people you trust, you know. And I think, like,
well, Hannah Gadsby's Nanette is the best example of it being one of the most incredible performances every single night, because the pain is so real. Like, if anyone got to see it live, I mean, it's great on Netflix for sure, but live, the room energy is something I've never felt anywhere else, you know? And it takes a special amount of courage and strength to be able to do that every night after night in front of thousands of people that she did. I just know that's not I don't have that in me yet. Do you know what I mean? Or I'm not as good a writer to be able to carry something like that. I have to try and pepper it with dumb shit like pasta Zenica or some shit like that. I
don't know. I think you're selling yourself short. I don't think it's about writing. I think it's about probably being comfortable talking like that on stage, because I don't think that. I mean, she's obviously an incredible writer, and that was it is an incredible show. But I think to get to that level, it's not writing. That I think that's performance, and that's passion. I think
I agree, passion, but also authenticity.
Yeah,
I think that's the one thing that if I've learned as a vital thing from almost tying everything we've chatted about, was finding what's authentic to you and being okay with it. So it pops up in everything we've talked about, whether it's me trying to fit in with the, like the boozy kind of lifestyle wasn't authentic to me trying to fit in with the religious background I had. My Instagram, I started by saying I'm kind of get teased about the fact that I'm so earnest and cheesy and like joyful on Instagram, and very much like hashtag blessed kind of vibe. And I'm like, but that's just who I am authentically, and just learning to go, if that's gross for some people to watch it, that's all right. There's enough of people that enjoy it. And at the end of the day, it's what I like. And so I've realized that even with stand-up, when you start out, I was like I was a Frankenstein of my favorite comics. I had like my Will Anderson bit. I would dress like Will Anderson and, perform like Fiona O'Loughlin. And, it's just like you pick your heroes and you're trying to manifest until you find your authentic voice. Yeah. And then once you know it, then you can break out into being whatever version, because people have now gone, we trust you to just show us yourself. And I think that's why I love stand-up as much as I do, is because it's the one place I finally feel like I belong, because people are coming to see what I have to say, not because, it's still a false kind of belonging, because it needs to show up with jokes, like it comes with caveats. So it's not real. Like I prefer belonging to my friends and family, like obviously, but I know what it's tapping into, and why I have so much reverence for it is because it's a place where I get to say and be who I am without worrying about, are these people going to go to hell because I'm here.
Wow.
It's an incredible story, and I'm wary of your time, Dilruk, but I'm so grateful for the time we've had together. I'm shattered we haven't had a chance to speak about running. In my head, I'd park about 30 minutes for it. For this interview. We haven't touched it at all, but I know it's been a huge part of your journey as well.
It's so annoying. I mean, this is part of the biggest issue with the heart attack is like, I never played sport as a kid, but I was on track. I was trying to break my 5K time to get sub 20, and I got to 22. And now I'm like 29, and I'm like, oh, it's so long, and it's so hard to get back there. But I keep going, no, process, just focus on what can you do better each day. I have a running coach, and he's like, just think of it as a page in a phone book. Each page is very thin and flippant, but you stack them all up, and you've got this thick, hard to rip thing,
I like that.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I'm just adding my phone book in.
I'll give you a call later and we can talk more about running. Dilruk is touring his new show, Heartstopper, across the country at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Sydney Comedy Festival and Brisbane Comedy Festival. Head to comedy.com.au. I didn't know that was a website. Comedy.com.au for dates and tickets, or you could go to your website as well, which is
or just Dilruk J on Instagram, I reckon, is probably where I post all the silly, earnest #blessed stuff.
Yeah, he is a lovely follow. So knock yourself out. Dilruk, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
today.
guys. Honestly, like Hugh, you know this. I'm such a fan of what you guys do and the podcast, and just it's so I don't know what the word is, but the idea of having men being vulnerable is something that I really wish I grew up with, listening to and aspiring to. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. So thank you.
Well, now you're doing it. So I think everyone should be very grateful for you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks Nazir.
That blew out the levels.
Oh, that's good.
I'm in Dilruk. Sorry.
That was the whole time.
Oh, amazing.
He doesn't have abs anymore. But
are we going to talk about Legally Brown? He's just a lovely, lovely man. He's one of those guys, actually, now that I think about it, if I wanted to have a day that was guaranteed good vibes, like I wanted like a day, I was like, I just want to hang out with people who are just lovely. You could call him, hang out with him for the day, and you're like, that's going to be a good day.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Dylan.
Especially obviously he's very funny, and that was pretty clear in that what he does for a job, but really vulnerable as well. Really vulnerable to share that stuff. Not easy to talk about, I don't think, especially the alcohol stuff. I think there's so much shame attached to that. But he did also mention at the end of the episode, which I think we should probably chat about, he mentioned he called Lifeline, and we're literally wrapping up the episode, like it just happened a couple of minutes ago, but we sort of brushed over it. And I think all of us felt a bit
weird.
Yeah, he'd left and we didn't say what happened with Lifeline or are you okay? Or he was in such a rush to go.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask him in the car because I gave him a lift into the city, but just felt like it was a long discussion. So I actually called him just to check in about that. And he gave me the most amazing insight into his experience with Lifeline. And I just want to share it quickly because I think it's really important. But he said...
and you got his permission for us to talk about
Of course,
this.
Yeah. No, he actually said, do not share this.
But he can't stop us.
It's good content. So
sign the contract.
Yeah. He said it was in 2020 and he was in a one-bedroom apartment by himself in Melbourne during the lockdowns. And he'd had 100 days by himself. He'd hurt his back, so he couldn't exercise at all. And he said that there was just this moment, he was cooking and he dropped a pot and it broke everyone on the floor and he couldn't bend down to pick it up because he'd hurt his back so badly. And he said it was just like this rock bottom moment. And he said for the first time in his life, he said he didn't have thoughts of ending it all, but he had this weird thought of like, I don't even really want to be here for this anymore. Like, I don't need to be here for this anymore. He didn't go as far as thinking,
Oh, wow.
that's it. I can't do this anymore. But he also had he said, I've never had it before, but I just noticed this thought of like, yeah, but I can't be bothered with this anymore. I'm done. Almost like he said, almost like someone just put me to sleep and wake me up in a year's time and this is all over.
Yeah.
And he said, so I observed that my mental state of my mood was slipping and slipping and slipping. And I thought, I want to call Lifeline now just to see what the experience is like. How long will I have to wait? What are the questions they're going to ask me? How will I feel during the process? Because I think in the future I might need this seriously.
Wow.
So he proactively called them and he said that to the lady. He said, I'm not in a crisis point right now, but I might be in the future. So I'm just taking this for a test drive. I just want to see what it's like. Yeah. And she said, I wish more people did this. It would just save so much heartache and so much pain.
Wow.
And so he said it was really great and he loved the experience and it was so unbelievably helpful. And so, yeah, he wasn't a crisis point. He wasn't in a good place, but he wasn't in a horrific place.
Mm.
And he called just to see what the experience was like. And he said the questions I asked were great. There was no wait time. He was straight to someone. And he said, and that was at the worst when it was at its worst. So
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, really amazing.
Huh.
The other thing I kept thinking about during this episode, and I'm worried that I'm a bit like a broken record banging on about this, but I can't not talk about it. And as a reflection of what he spoke about, but I just feel like, and I might have said this on the podcast before, but I feel like so often people come up to me or they'll send me messages saying so-and-so is struggling. My mum or my friend or my partner's really struggling with this mental health issue. What do you reckon they do? And I'm not a psychologist, so I never ever even think to really start giving advice or saying this could be the problem. Why don't you try this? But I always want to say to them, I feel like giving them a brand new pair of running shoes and saying, come back to me when you've worn these out.
I feel like you've said that before. I've definitely heard you say that before.
I just feel like the power of, I mean, for me, it's running and some people it's running. That's not to be taken literally. Like the power of movement and exercise for regeneration of any type of mental health problem or maintaining mental health. It's just, I mean, it was huge for him, but I just feel like 6 months, I mean, it's less than that, but if someone came back to me and had run a lot for 6 months, I feel like a lot of their problems would be sorted out.
Promise.
Again, I'm not a psychologist, but it did remind me of a show that the three of us have watched. I've watched it now. I think I've watched it like at least 5 times now. Stutz on Netflix. I couldn't.
This is the documentary that Jonah Hill made about his therapist, Phil Stutz. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he gets Phil Stutz to unpack all the tools that he'd used on him to get him through really challenging stuff in his life.
Yeah.
And the first thing I talk about is, he says, the first thing you need to do when you're healing from anything through therapy is to unlock your life force. And his life force he presents as a pyramid. At first, it looks like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It kind of looks that's what you sort of want to imagine, but it's more of a simple version of that. And we can post a link to it in the show notes. But there are in the pyramid there are 3 sections. Very simply, 3 things. And the first section, which takes up the majority of the pyramid, it just says body. So your physical body, basically. And what he's saying is, you need to take control of that. You need to start moving. So you start exercising, eating well, and sleeping properly. He said they're the 3 things that really, that's taking control. And when I heard Dilruk speaking, I was thinking, that's the first step of his life force. The other thing is your life force, or the second one up the pyramid, is people or connection to other people. And he feels like he says when you're really struggling, you're less likely to reach out to other people. But when you do, they're almost like a life raft. Like if you're going down, you grab onto other people. You stay connected to them. They can pull you up.
Yeah.
But if you don't reach out to other people, you can't hang on and they can't lift you up out of whatever you're sort of descending into. And then the third one is yourself. Actually, the relationship with yourself, which is all through this, Jonah Hill says to him, what's the most important out of the 3? And he like doesn't even take a breath. He just says, your physical body. He says that's 70, I can't remember the exact number. He says that's 75%, 80%. I think he says that's 80% of the challenge. That's 80% of it is just taking control of your physical body. And he says, and this is Philip Stutz, he's a psychiatrist, and he says exercise is just so important. And it works so nicely together because when you exercise, you feel naturally more like you want to eat well. And then when you've exercised, you're also more likely to sleep well.
Yeah. But this is like exercise. We all, I would say, immediately pair exercise with weight loss. And with like the reason you exercise is to look better, or to lose weight or whatever. But I think it's quite a new, generally speaking, in the history of the world, I think it's quite a new concept to think about exercise in terms of our brain and our mental health.
And I think we all knew, whether it was conscious or not, that we feel better when we exercise. I think everyone knew that, but now there's just so much research coming out about how unbelievably important it is for your mental health.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of people in the running community around my age who have struggled with something, and this is, I'm not saying running's the answer. These are the people that I speak to a lot. Running has been either life-changing or life-saving for them.
Yeah.
And it's come across, it's something they've started doing in their, maybe they didn't do it when they're younger, but now they've done it out of a desperate place. Someone suggested it, and it's just become how they shape their day. It's certainly how I shape my day. It's like today is a recovery day, and so I'm trying to eat and I'm trying to drink a lot of water, and I look forward to going to bed early tonight because tomorrow's a running day. It sort of shapes my week, and it shapes it in a really healthy way. Again, I'm not saying running. A lot of people talk about weights and gym, how important that is to them.
I've just started swimming. Swimming's good.
Oh, swimming's unbelievable. It means you eat a lot. Are you extremely hungry?
I'm hungry, yeah. I'm probably not doing enough swimming. Like
Right,
I'm not able to do enough laps yet to probably get that level of, but definitely even, I don't know whether it's actually the exercise, but just I just feel good about myself that I've started my day with like doing, 8 laps or whatever I do.
Yeah, great. So again, this is, we have talked about this before. It's like, I think we all know that now. The next step, and Josh, this is an interesting one for you, is like, where does the motivation come from? Like, I know all that intellectually. I get it. I understand it's important, but I don't want to. And I have zero motivation to. So that I'm not so much talking about how we then get motivated for that, but it just becomes more and more clear to me that when people get into it, it is life-changing in the most profound way. If anyone who wants to learn more about this, Philip Stutz presents it in a much more engaging and much more articulate way. It might be worth watching that. And it's right at the start. It's early on. So
he also co-wrote a book called The Tools, which is essentially the book version of what that doco is about.
Yeah. And just so it's not just me saying exercise is great because it makes me feel great. There's a guy who works at Resilience Project, a wonderful man called Peter C. Hugh. His name's not important, but well, it probably is to him.
I think his parents would say it's important.
It's a great name.
His name's not important. Identity doesn't matter. He's just a person. In fact, let's be honest, it's a thing. It's a walking organism.
Sorry, Peter.
Peter's, for the relevance of this article, his name's not important, but he's a very important man in my life as well. In fact, remember when he met Patrick, our son, I remember thinking, this is it, Peter C. Hugh's son. And it was so good. I was like, I don't know what happens if I say this now in front of everyone. It's just like, it's too good. And I never said it.
Yeah, that's like one of those moments where you expect the Matrix to break or something. It's like, hang on, I've done something incredible here.
Peter C. Hewson. Peter C. Hugh's son. Well, anyway.
Fantastic, Hugh.
So
really, it's the best thing you've done on the podcast. I mean, when there's like a 50 years of podcasting like tribute thing in like however many years, that's going in.
That's my Anyway, the wonderful Peter C. Hewson sent me a link to this article, and the heading was, and Peter loves his exercise just as much as I do, exercise more effective than medicine to manage mental health. It says University of South Australia researchers are calling for exercise to be a mainstay approach for managing depression, as a new study shows that physical activity is 1.5 times more effective than counselling or the leading medications. Published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, the review is the most comprehensive to date. So it's been reviewed 97 times. It's had 1,039 trials, and there are over 125,000 participants. It basically shows that physical activity is extremely beneficial for improving symptoms of depression, anxiety, and distress. which is just amazing. It goes on to say
That is amazing.
Yeah, it goes on to say the actual type of activity, which is the good news for me. But it's and everyone also exercise like I do. But specifically, the review showed that exercises interventions that were 12 weeks or shorter were the most effective in reducing mental health symptoms, highlighting the speed at which physical activity can make a change. And it talks about how. So when I went to say benefit for me, it says high intensity stuff is really, really the most powerful way of doing it, as opposed to long, endurance stuff, like high intensity, quick, high interval stuff is really, really powerful for improving mental health, which is just, and it doesn't surprise me, but it's nice to know that there's evidence to back that up.
It's like, is it HIIT? HIIT?
Yes.
High intensive
interval training.
Interval training. Yeah. HIIT.
Yeah.
Not HIT. HIIT.
Yeah. That. Yes. That, if you're trying to remember. But the headline of that article, if you want to look it up, it's through the University of South Australia. Exercise more effective than medicines. Not that medicines are great, and so too the medicines and counselling are incredible. Exercise, just here according to this research, is 1.5 times more effective.
Incredible. Well, I mean, it's like it reminds me of the first episode we did this year, which was with Chrissy Swan, and her talking about how when she got quite emotional talking about when she found walking and she started walking every day, and she just, she was doing it purely for time to herself, time to think, and it just completely changed her life. She started with just doing 300 meters, I think she said, and it just grew and grew and grew, and she just walked more. And now she still does it every day, as far as I know. And I love walking. Running, I've never been able to get into, but really what you're talking about here is just it's movement.
It's movement.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I think running or swimming or weights or anything can be quite overwhelming. The thought of doing that, most people are like, well, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
But walking, I find, is something that it's so beneficial. Just wanted to add that in. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It does sound hard to me. I probably sound like a broken record because I feel like I probably don't want to sound like I'm just coming on the podcast and whinging.
No, but
I probably have before many times. But it's a tough thing to hear that, because if you can't, it's undoubtedly true, and I'm really happy for everyone who can do that. But I just I don't know. I need to spend time with a psychologist or something, because I just can't. I think I've said this phrase before, but it just feels like that's a whole world that's there for other people, but not for me.
Yeah.
And to hear that it unlocks so many wonderful things just makes you feel like even worse for not doing it. Like I feel this kind of like, oh God, it does all that stuff and you still can't get your ass out of the seat, so to speak, to use a brash phrase. Yeah. I mean, what would actually be really good, because I feel like often there's so many different activities, like movement type things that you could do. And I remember when I was a kid, when you're at school, there are like summer programs you can go to, like summer like camps or something. And I remember I'd go to one, and like one point, some of the day you're doing archery, and then you go and you do, maybe like you ride a pony for a bit, and then there's all these different things you can do, and it kind of gives you a little taste of all these different things. I feel like we need that as an adult. Yeah,
totally.
Like we need like movement degustations. Just get a little taste of all these different things.
You do all of them. It's like you've done a lot of exercise.
Oh yeah, but what you could get from is go like, I never would have thought I'd like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But here I am.
A little taste, and it's delicious.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yep.
Having said that, I do
love jiu-jitsu.
I do it 8 times a week.
Well, this is a shock.
Yeah. No, I think the current stage I'm in my life, I spend a lot of time carrying small children around and walking them and wrestling and playing with Charlie and carrying Augie, who's smaller, but Charlie's, he's probably 18 kilos now, and carrying him around a lot. And I think my upper body is probably it's probably a mixture of being the strongest I've ever been, but also probably closest to injury that I've ever been, because it's always like throwing them over your head, just all bad technique.
Well, let me
awful
support
stuff
that.
for your back.
Let me support that. We went over to Josh's house the other night, our family, to have fish and chips. On the way back from the fish and chip shop, Josh was carrying Charlie, and then Elsie and Benji went, we're going to be carried too. And so they didn't go to me, they went to Josh, and Josh carried all three of them back.
Whoa.
And I think I challenged myself to run home.
Yeah, you ran home. I couldn't have done that. There's no way. I couldn't even hold the three of them. You carried them, ran them all the way home with them.
I actually think I've done permanent damage from that.
Oh, okay.
It hurts so. I challenged them. I'm like, we'll make it to the end of the straight. I'll carry all three of you. It was about 100 metres.
More than that.
Running with them, with the three of them on me. And I kind of got there, and for the last few steps, I'm like, oh God, my back is going here. And I put them down, and I could barely walk. And I reckon I'm still getting over that. But
you really felt the mental health benefits.
yeah. So back is screwed for life, but I feel slight endorphin hit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not as sedentary as I sort of consider myself to be because of that stuff. But
if you wore it, not that you'd ever would, but if you wore like a step counter, I think your steps would be up so much more than you realise. And I actually wonder if you start framing the movement you do with, because I know you do get a bit down about it, or you do.
Yeah.
I wonder if you just started to think, like, count all that stuff as exercise.
Yeah.
You might realise you exercise a lot more and feel a bit better about
maybe
the whole situation.
Yeah, potentially, rather than just thinking I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. And I think probably for a lot of people with young kids, a salient point, because not many people with young kids have time to go to gyms or go for walks or run or anything. So maybe you're getting more exercise and movement in than you think.
I feel like we've just unlocked a big solution to a big issue, which is like daycare and exercise merged together. So you have these like facilities where it's like people can drop off their kids, and then people who want to like work out can go and look after those kids. Right?
Whilst doing a degustation of
activities. Yeah. So you're playing all games with the kids, but it's like you're moving but looking after other people's kids. It's actually bloody perfect.
Yeah. I'm just imagining dropping Charlie off and going, so this is Michael. He'll be carrying Charlie for the next 6 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you bench, mate? 3 7-year-olds. Cool. That's impressive.
Like literally? Yep.
Absolutely.
You're in much better shape than you'd probably give yourself credit for. Like, we had to build a bunk bed at our house the other day, and Josh came around to help, and we had to move it up to get it up the stairs, and Josh and I were carrying it together. And at one point, he's just so strong. At one point, I was on one side, you couldn't see me. We couldn't see each other on the other side of the bunk. I was like, am I doing anything here? And I actually took my hands off. I took my hands off it completely.
I didn't know that.
And it kept going. It was just like, I wasn't doing anything. I actually wasn't doing anything. You carried the whole thing up. So yeah, you're much fitter than you probably give yourself credit for. But
maybe
that's why his back's out.
yeah, exactly. Those two things: your children and your bunk bed.
Wow.
My back's fine. So that's good.
Okay, glad to hear it.
You haven't done a bit of work.
Anyway, Dilruk was wonderful, and we love him. And you must go and see his show, Heartstopper. It's he's brilliant. His show's brilliant, and he's just a gem.
Thanks, guys. Hugh, it's Ryan. I cannot stop thinking about that business idea. And I just feel like we've got to jump on it, otherwise someone's going to take it, okay? So, daycare mixed with gym. Remember that? Okay. What if we call it Childasize, okay? So there's different stations in the gym/daycare, right? So there's child weights, like we talked about. Like you can bench children based on their age or weight, like that's a given. But what about a plate fetch station, right? So the kid who's at the daycare, they're throwing their plates and cutlery across the room during lunch, and then as the adult, you have to run, bring it back as quickly as possible. And the kid's going to keep throwing it, so you just go and get it, bring it back, go and get it, bring it. It's like high intensity, okay? Okay, so then there's this other one I was thinking about. It's called the patronising sprint. This is sort of more for a warm-up or warm-down. It's where you race against the children. But of course, you act like you're racing, but you're just letting them win. So yeah, the patronising sprint. Anyway, there's so many things we could do here. I just feel like it's a really good opportunity. So give me a call back. Let me know. I'm excited. Okay, Childasize. Think about it. It's Ryan Shelton from the podcast, The Imperfects.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1. To reply.
The Imperfects is not a licensed mental health service and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, treatment, or assessment. The advice given in this episode is general in nature, but if you're struggling, please see a healthcare professional or call Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and produced by Hugh Van Cuylenberg, Ryan Shelton, and Josh Van Cuylenberg. Our executive producer is Bridget Northeast. This episode is filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin.
You set the tone and I'll be alright. You set the flame